It started with a rumble. Not thunder, not construction, just the slow groaning sound of foundation regret. For houses, $600,000 homes with infinity porches and live-laugh decor, were now sliding inch by inch downhill. Their backyards were turning into a muddy luge track. The culprit was gravity, yes, but also the HOA's decision to bulldoze a very specific rain garden, one that had been absorbing runoff for 7 years. The sound of cracking concrete echoed through Maplewood Crest that morning like nature's own verdict. Windows that once framed perfect suburban views now showed tilted horizons. Pool decks split like broken promises. And somewhere deep in the earth beneath those sliding foundations, water moved freely through soil that no longer had anything to hold it back. I'm Caleb Morton, and I don't like attention. Civil engineer by trade, hobbyist gardener by therapy. I moved to Maplewood Crest for quiet afternoons, bird watching, and mulch. 7 years ago, I installed a professionally designed rain garden, a shallow plant-filled depression that controlled stormwater, filtered runoff, and frankly made my yard look like a Monet painting. The installation took 3 weeks and cost me $8,000, but the peace of mind was priceless. Native plants thrived in the carefully graded basin. Purple coneflowers, switchgrass, and wild columbine created layers of color that changed with the seasons. More importantly, the garden absorbed 25,000 gallons of runoff annually, preventing it from cascading down toward the lower properties. Enter Bev Lundgren, HOA president, former realtor, and proud owner of a laminated, drainage aesthetics policy she made herself. She called my garden swampy, non-compliant, and mosquito-prone. It didn't matter that it was EPA endorsed. Bev wanted grass. She approached me one morning while I was checking the moisture levels in the bioswale. Her voice carried the practiced sweetness of someone about to make your life miserable. She said, with a condescending tone, that my garden was bringing down property values. I showed her the environmental certification from the county. She waved it away like a bad smell and informed me that the HOA had standards that superseded any government approval. Bev issued citations. I responded with permits. She countered with a cease and desist from the HOA's Visual Unity Committee. When that failed, she brought in Tony, the HOA's go-to landscaping guy, who once weed-whacked someone's hydrangeas into extinction. The man had a reputation for scorched earth tactics when it came to non-compliant yards. I received 17 violation notices in 3 months, each one more creative than the last. My garden was too deep, then too shallow. The plants were too tall, then not uniform enough. The mulch was the wrong color. The decorative rocks weren't from the approved vendor list. I responded to each one with documentation, soil percolation tests, and water table analyses that would make a hydrologist weep with joy. One weekend, while I was at a soil conservation seminar, and yes, seriously, those exist and they're fascinating, the HOA sent in a backhoe. They bulldozed the rain garden, flattened it, hauled away the bioswale, native sedges, and absorbent loam, and replaced it with sod and gravel. Bev called it a reclamation. I called it what it was, ecological arson. When I returned Sunday evening, my neighbor Janet met me in the driveway, her face pale. She stammered that they came Saturday morning with 3 trucks and a crew of 8. It took them 4 hours to destroy 7 years of careful cultivation. The new sod sat there like a bad toupee, already showing signs of stress from the compacted soil beneath. Then the rains came. A once-in-a-decade downpour that started on a Tuesday and didn't stop until Friday. Without the rain garden, water tore through Maplewood Crest like a baptism of poor choices. Storm drains backed up within 6 hours. Lawns turned into bogs by day 2, and the slope, yes, the slope behind the eastern row of homes, began to shift. The first sign was a retaining wall that developed a crack you could fit your hand through. Then the Petersons noticed their patio furniture had moved 3 feet overnight without anyone touching it. By Thursday, you could hear it, that deep, earthen groan of soil giving up its fight against gravity. Turns out, my garden wasn't just decorative. It was stabilizing half the neighborhood. Without it, hydrostatic pressure built beneath the poorly compacted soil that Bev once called firm enough. The rain garden had been intercepting and redirecting surface water away from the vulnerable slope. Now, all that water saturated the hillside like a sponge. The soil liquefied. Physics took over. For houses, the crown jewels of Maplewood Crest's eastern ridge, began their slow-motion disaster. The Hendersons woke up to find their pool had developed a 15 degrees tilt. The Gwynns discovered their 3-car garage door wouldn't close because the frame had shifted 6 inches. I filed reports first with the city, then with the county, then with the Department of Environmental Quality, which took one look at my before and after drone footage and launched a formal investigation. The footage was damning. Crystal clear video showed a functioning bioswale system one day, a flat grass wasteland the next. Timestamps proved the HOA acted without proper permits. Bev, meanwhile, tried to host an emergency sod fundraiser at the community center. 7 people showed up, and 5 of them were there to yell at her. She stood at the podium, still insisting with a defensive tone that the rain garden had been an eyesore and a liability. City engineers came with clipboards and concerned expressions. Their verdict was swift and brutal: the HOA had illegally altered a functional stormwater management system. The bulldozing was a violation of environmental code and a direct cause of slope destabilization. The lead engineer, a woman named Patricia Chen who didn't suffer fools, told Bev directly that this was the most preventable disaster she'd seen in 20 years. The city issued an immediate stop work order on all HOA landscape modifications. They also began calculating fines, big ones, the kind that make board members update their resumes. The investigation revealed that my rain garden had been managing runoff from 32 properties uphill. The bioswale system I'd installed was handling 3 times the water volume that city planning had originally calculated for the area. Without it, that water had nowhere to go but down, through, and under. Soil samples showed saturation levels at 200% of capacity. The geotechnical report used words like catastrophic failure and imminent hazard. Insurance adjusters arrived and immediately started taking photos while shaking their heads. The HOA was fined $250,000. Bev personally was cited for environmental negligence, a misdemeanor that came with its own $10,000 penalty. Insurance refused to cover the homes currently inching toward Maplewood Creek, citing negligent maintenance and willful destruction of protective infrastructure. I, meanwhile, offered a solution: rebuilding the rain garden for a price, a very consulting fee kind of price, $75 per hour plus materials plus a 20% emergency response surcharge. The board approved it without discussion. At the emergency HOA meeting, I presented a slide deck titled, "Why You're All Sinking and I'm Not." The room was packed, standing room only. I explained with a calm, professional tone how water tables work, why bioswales matter, and what happens when you ignore an engineer's advice. Slide 17 showed the projected repair costs, $800,000 just to stabilize the slope. Slide 23 outlined the lawsuits already filed by affected homeowners. Applause broke out when I finished. Someone brought me banana bread. Bev sat in the back row, her face cycling through shades of red I'd only seen in paint stores. The vote to remove Bev was unanimous. Even she voted for it, apparently confused by the wording of the motion. She was also sentenced to complete an 8-week environmental remediation course under city supervision. The judge said, with a stern tone, that ignorance of water management principles was no excuse when you're making decisions that affect public safety. She now runs a native plant Instagram called Bev's Bioswales Court Ordered, where she has to post 3 times a week about sustainable landscaping practices. The account has 4 followers, all compliance officers. I rebuilt the rain garden, bigger, better, and with a small sign that reads, "This garden prevents your home from becoming lakefront. You're welcome." The restoration took 2 months and cost the HOA $93,000. The slope was stabilized with additional retention systems that cost another $400,000. 3 board members resigned. Property values dropped 18%. And Bev? She was personally sued by 4 homeowners and settled out of court for an undisclosed amount that her neighbor Janet whispered was north of $200,000. She sold her house 3 months later at a $40,000 loss and moved to a condo with no HOA. The last time anyone saw her, she was at a garden center staring at rain barrels with an expression of pure defeat.